welcome a huge thank you to George Kaminsky, who is our wonderful partner from Westbeth. He's one of the beating hearts of this very special and important organization in New York. We were fortunate enough to partner with George and with Westbeth on the World Voices Festival, the 2011 World Voices Festival. We held a literary safari in which I know many of the Westbeth residents are well familiar with it, but we had festival guests kind of wander through the halls and kind of explore and find secrets and literary secrets and architectural secrets alike. It was really special, and we're so happy to be able to bring today the fall tasting. We have a bookseller from McNally, which is one of New York City's most beloved bookstores. They curate a wonderful shop. It's on Prince and Lafayette. And Dustin Kurtz is here, and he's going to be talking about fall books, the kind of secrets, the mysteries, the things you must read, maybe some of the things you could just avoid, I don't know. But anyway, I just want to say a huge thank you. I hope that you'll stay through to the reception where we can all be together and have a glass of Prosecco and talk about, the literature that we were fortunate enough to hear and receive. So thank you, George, and thank you all people from Westbeth. And thank you for coming. Okay, Dustin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dustin Kurtz. I'm from McNally Books, as she said, downtown, which is an independent bookstore. Obviously, if you've elected to come to a reading tonight, a book tasting, I'm going to assume I'm talking to the choir here. You know what an independent bookseller is. But just in short, that means no shareholders. I buy lunch where I sell books. We think of independent bookstores as something of a tent pole in the community. That is, we help buoy up a community around us. To a certain extent, I think that's more or less true. I like to say that bookstores are a collective noun, much like church. Rather than indicating sort of the building and the pews and all that, it's more an indicator for the community that makes it, the patrons that make a bookstore what it is. So thank you for having me out here tonight. Just real quickly, I'm going to talk about some of the books that I think maybe people have missed or have seen, but maybe glanced too quickly past here tonight. This season, of course, has been a big season for massive books. You have, let me see here, we have, of course, Murakami's 1Q84, or Q-Teen84, we like to call it. And then Eugenides, of course. These books clocking in at 900 pages with Steve Jobs' biography. Huge forests have been murdered senselessly to make these books. And for the most part, those are, they're fine, they're good. If you like Eugenides, read the Eugenides. If you like the Murakami, by all means, read the Murakami. It's an excellent novel. If you like baseball and closeted homosexual relationships, read Chad Harback. That's an excellent novel, really worthwhile. But the big book that I really want to talk about first is by Peter Nadash. You may have heard of him. He's Hungarian. He writes in Hungarian about Germany and Hungary quite a bit. His earlier book, The Book of Memories, is sort of often talked about as one of the great books of the past century. And I, maybe too glibly, but I sometimes call it my favorite novel. He writes big, dense, heady books, not so much character-driven as gesture-driven. He's kind of a virtuoso of the body. The book, being about the body, is just chock full of cocks also, so that's it is a big, slow, hard book, so if you want something along those lines. Next we have Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. She's British, shockingly young. She's something like 26 or 27. This is maybe her third or fourth novel. She's going from the place of the Jacksons with Shirley and Shelley, using a British folktale about Mr. Fox. It's sort of this Bluebeard tale of the murder, but imbuing it with sort of a lot of really, a lot of Gru and more character than you would think one person could cram into it. She's a big fan and has spoken openly about Barbara Comyn's, sort of a neglected British writer. And it's beautiful, it's kind of a quick read and not to be overlooked.
Can you repeat the name?
Sure, it's Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. And I should say that you guys are welcome to come down and see these books after the fact if you prefer. Oyeyemi, and It's just here. I think her family is Nigerian originally. It's Oyeyemi. Let's see then, what are we going on to next? You know what, I would be so remiss if I didn't mention actually two of the authors here tonight whose books I've particularly enjoyed. Sabrina Murray, whose book is going to be reviewed in the Times this weekend, a tale full of swashbuckle and murder and sort of her carnal predilections for cannibalism. And Hal Foster, who has two big smart hardcovers on our front table in McNally Jackson right now, and whose earlier book, Design as Crime, I sold to a friend, and she told me, "Oh, you're amazing at this job" the next day. Whether or not that was because she loved the book or because she felt like I hoodwinked her and it was terrible, I don't know. But I think he's fantastic. You should attend his reading if you can. Where are we moving on to? Quickly. I don't know if you can't see, but I have this big hidden stash of books back here, so buckle up. Let's see. Let's move on to this. This book has the misfortune of having the single ugliest cover in the bookstore right now, but it is one of the most brilliant books in there. Gerald Murnane is the author's name. He's about a 70-year-old, I think. He's from Australia. This is published as a paperback original by Dalkey Archive Press. He is Proustian in every sense of the word, but Proust as translated by David Markson, the postmodernist. So the book is Catholic in the extreme, all about hidden layers and boys running to the rushes and hiding from sort of budding sexuality and sort of eating berries and dollhouses and genius stuff. But at the same time, it's framed within this he's trying to describe why he's given up writing, and talking about the power of the image in the writing and how when books you've read fade, what is it that stays and why does it stay? So utterly worth reading. He has another book coming out with them in May too, so if you skip that, worth seeing. Let's move on to something a little less tedious. This is called Like a Sniper Lining Up His Shot, illustrated by Jacques Tardy, written by Jean-Patrick Manchette, adapted from a novel by Manchette. It's a brutal graphic novel, spy fiction full of double and triple crossings. It's as if Hergé had sort of been mangled and reformed and grown necrotic and ugly. It's Hergé? I'm not Belgian. As you see, it's complicated and thick and full of slaps. And at one point, a character grows mute because his identity has been revealed. It's very gnarly, but at the same time, it's so fun, dark too. Let's move on. Let's go to some essays, some nonfiction. I think. Let's begin with Joan Didion. Joan Didion, this is not a book that's been overlooked, but a book that deserves to be applauded. Joan Didion has been, probably will remain, one of the greatest essayists that we have in this country. She's sort of, her writing is in a very strange way drawn from the rhythms of her speech. She has a rhythm first, and the meaning tends to come out of it. Here she covers a lot of similar ground to Year of Magical Thinking, the death of her daughter, sorrow, but fear of her own mortality plays a much bigger role in this. She's coming to terms with things like her own body and physical therapy. So she's sort of covering Philip Roth territory, or W.S. Merwin's Shadow of Sirius. Even more poignantly, she loses some of that rhythmic magic in this book that we come to know her by, and addresses it within the book itself. The book doesn't sound like Joan Didion in Song of Bethlehem. It sounds like Joan Didion trying to channel that Joan Didion. And so it's sadder and more beautiful for it, slim, and deserves the time. Another book, this actually has been out in hardcover from a university press, new in paperback with vintage. Edwidge Danticat, great, fantastic novelist. These are her essays, Create Dangerously, written before, during, and after the earthquake in Haiti, that great tragedy. She is Haitian, left there at a young age. So this is about there's an essay about bringing a gay cousin's corpse down to Haiti beforehand, or about visiting after it. I was brought to tears maybe twice, 3 times by the essays in this book. And I'm a little bit hard bitten, so that's not easy to do. Beautiful, worth the time. Let's move on to what do we have here? Another assume a literary crowd, so essays about books are certainly okay. Jonathan Lethem and Lawrence Wexler, both writing big, thick essay books, certainly to a certain extent about books. Reviews are involved with each. They both see themselves as sort of outsider artists, as bemused slash confused, and sort of examining things along those lines. Latham in here plays with ideas of bricolage, of theft out and out. The Ecstasy of Influence, the title essay here you may have read a couple years back, is written almost entirely in snippets from other essays, with some of his commentary in there and changing. It's a long sort of commentary on remix culture. It's brilliant. Also, the first few bits in this take place in a bookshop, so obviously I melted when I read it. Wexler, instead of doing bricolage, is more about serendipity, about the found beauty, and he's made a career out of this. You may have seen his work in The Believer, among other places, and a few other books beforehand, where he discusses, isn't this strange that this happened? These connections. And it's obviously that's a very easy way to point to the ecstatic, is to say all of these things are happening around us. And he pulls it off beautifully. Again, sort of just an unfortunately ugly cover, and I apologize for that. I had nothing to do with it. Oh my God, where? Mahmoud Darwish, you may know, especially if any of you are here as part of a pen list. Darwish has another book out with Archipelago this fall. It's just hit our stores today, called In the Presence of Absence. Darwish, for those of you who don't know, is the great late Palestinian poet. His work is suffused with the mundane, but then every now and then he sort of lets himself stray into what do I say, the theoretical as pointing towards the beyond, like the Walter Benjamin sort of style, where he believes in the spirituality of things, but is using jargon to reach towards it. It's some of the sexier poetry you'll ever read, full of love, and more than anything, full of longing. It's a book about exile. All of his books are books about exile, as all Palestinian books are to a certain extent, but his explicitly so. This is sort of long prose poetry, beautiful in the extreme, hard to label, worth reading. Let's talk a little bit about poetry. What do I have here? Before that, let me do these two things that have come out that are, speaking of the difficult, if you guys are here at a literary reading, I'm not gonna coddle it, I'm gonna give you strange stuff, things you might not have seen. Mina Loy, I don't know if you've known, a poet. This is her first collection of story and essay from, just out from Dalkey Archive Press. Beautiful, she writes sort of embodied fiction. She's a proto-feminist, a feminist but also complicated. Beautiful reactions to futurism in their reactions to the Walt Whitman, to the nuclear bomb, but also sort of full of louche female rebellion, women sort of spending money and lounging on couches and fucking people who they shouldn't, and it's, I don't know, it's entirely worthwhile. But again, a little bit different. Another one to pair that with, Gary Lutz. Gary Lutz is a favorite of the MFA set, we can say. Gary Lutz has never met a sentence that he doesn't want to mangle, and thereby make beautiful. He's one of the closest things you can come to poetry within prose. He's also, because his sentences are so twisted and corrupted almost, he's stuck with a vocabulary of the mundane in his sort of day-to-day writings. So when he writes about our relationships, or about bad suit coats like this one, or things along those lines. And then he can't help but twist those too. So there's not a man in a Gary Lutz story that doesn't underneath his clothing have on fishnet stockings. It's about heartbreak and sex, and about the prose itself. Gary Lutz is always about the prose itself. Strange, difficult, really beautiful. Now we can go into poetry real quickly. What time is it, by the way? Okay, I've got a little bit of time. Another poetic pairing. These are both poets that address youth, maybe more than anybody I've ever seen. Tim Dlugos is a poet I just ran into this year myself, which is such an embarrassment. This book came out in May, so it's not strictly a fall book, but it holds just a place in my heart that I just need to push it on everybody. He is, there's a Ted Berrigan blurb, I guess you can say, on the back, calling him the Frank O'Hara of his generation. And that's right, he's gossipy. A lot of the poems are about sort of random encounters, a lot of sort of sordid sex, and a lot of name dropping, both to people and poets and artists he was writing with, as well as sort of the products in his life. But Blue Ghost benefits from O'Hara. He benefits from what came after O'Hara. So he's stylistically more profound a little bit. He's looser when it's appropriate to be looser, and he has more freedom to him. And that makes the poem sort of a big blessing. At the beginning, very sexy. Towards the end, he starts having thoughts about religion, and then the last few poems are him being sad and troubled by how petty he himself is as he dies of AIDS in a hospital. So not light towards the ending, but utterly essential reading. Here we go. Claire Becker, blindingly young in this book. It ranges from when she's maybe just turning into her 20s, and it goes maybe a few years beyond that. It reeks of it. It's terrible with youth. So it's full of her anxieties. It's full of blind spots. Even the way the page is laid out is hesitant. Or where it's sure, it's mistakenly sure, but so beautiful at the same time. And obviously, nobody can ever be unsure as a poet. There's wisdom there that even we would find that she might not have been muted with. From Octopus Books, a tiny press, who if you've not run into them before, you should read. And also, not a bad looking book. And then, sort of in closing, let me pull up, one more poetry book. Jenny Ige, whose name I'm probably butchering, Chuvash poet. He has a book coming out from Wave Books this fall called Into the Snow. He wrote in Chuvash, which apparently is the native language of some part of the steppes south of Russia. He also wrote in Russian occasionally. So his book is thick with sort of nature imagery, but an acuity for structure that you won't find in many other poems coming out of there. It's savvy and smart and I don't know, it's addictive too, so look out for that one. I don't have it yet.
What was the name on that?
It's called Into the Snow from Wave Books, and his last name is A-Y-G-I. It's worthwhile. And lastly, in honor of November 17th, in honor of that Wall Street movement that's happening right now, just a little bit downtown, a couple books to address that. Debt by the anthropologist David Graeber, who was one of the organizers of the first meetup downtown. It's a book addressing mischaracterizations of the history of debt, what it means to have debt as a pervasive relationship, and how that's shaped our politics from there on in. Again, it is an anthropological book from Melville House, I should note, a small publisher in Brooklyn. But he himself is a radical, an anarchist even. So it's entertaining, and you'll leave it, full of like sort of Malcolm Gladwellian aha quotes, but less shilling for sort of classist apology than that guy. Rich People Things by Chris Lamont. This came out of a column for The All, an online journal, a couple years ago. This is biting and so smart and full of facts, but at the same time, not dry. It's enraging without being pandering like some people are, and worth it alone for the introduction and the endnotes, which I wish I could take out and legally distill and just sort of pass out to everybody downtown. It's a call to arms, and if nothing else, just a call to ire, and that's okay too, right? I think that is it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to see me afterwards. Feel free to come and thumb through the books, and barring that, I'll see you in the apartments. Thank you.